Welcome to another episode of Breaking into Cybersecurity. Today, we have Brian Carbaugh, who will be sharing his journey into cybersecurity, what it took for him to break in and evolve his career, as well as tips and tricks for keeping up with cybersecurity going into the future.
Thank you so much, Christoph. And I really appreciate the invitation and happy to spend some time with you today. My background in cybersecurity starts oddly, maybe not in cybersecurity. I had gone into the Marines after I graduated from college. I wanted to serve my country and I wanted to try to get into the special operations realm. So after graduating from the Air Force Academy, which is probably an odd place to start a career in the Marine Corps, or at least in national security at that point, I went to the Marines, spent some time on active duty, went back to graduate school at Georgetown here in DC, and then had really become captivated by overseas travel and studying foreign languages and trying to participate in the national security space by a lot of what I had done in the Marines. I had taken a couple deployments around South America and Asia while I was in the Marines. Really enjoyed the teaming aspect of being a Marine and being on sort of specialized, highly focused teams. So I took that experience with me into graduate school and I was really trying to figure it out. I didn't know what would be next for me, but I knew I wanted to stay in service. I wasn't sure if it would be the FBI, CIA, maybe NSA, maybe work on Capitol Hill. But I really kind of kept coming back to my desire to travel and work abroad and beyond really highly specialized and highly focused teams, really sort of trending toward the special operations realm. So I graduated from Georgetown University. I was at the School of Foreign Service there for a few years and went into the CIA and the Directorate of Operations as a ground branch officer, really a paramilitary operations officer or special operations officer, getting there in very early 2000.
And from that, like you mentioned, you couldn't decide what got you to pivot towards technology as being one of those areas of interest within your career.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. When I started my career in CIA on the Directorate of Operations side, that's covert portion of CIA, and I spent my entirety of my career in the Directorate of Operations on the covert action side. When I retired, I rolled my cover back. Someone who serves undercover at CIA obviously had to get permission from the agency to come forward and state that I had worked there during the times that I did. I worked very closely with the Office of Security and different elements within the agency to carefully roll my cover back. What I saw over the course of my career on the special operations side, and as a sort of high level overview, the Special Activity Center within CIA is the home of its covert action infrastructure. And that's where I spent the overwhelming majority of my time as a ground branch paramilitary officer. I worked from the very junior stages of my career until I got more senior, at first focusing on the teaming aspect, build the team, carry out the operations, be mission focused, be resilient, do the things that you're asked to do. Obviously, the timing of my career, I was very early in Afghanistan. So I joined up with CIA's first team that went to Afghanistan very early in that campaign's history in the fall of 2001. And as I spent more time traveling around the world, more time as part of CIA's covert action teams, and I ultimately got more senior, I saw just how critical it was, not just to have the right people and the right mission, the right rules of engagement, but the right technology and the right technologists and the right mindset and culture in a team where you recognize that technology can really be that thing that separates good teams from great teams. There was another part of my career at CIA where I served as the chief of staff at CIA for 2 years for two different directors of CIA. And in that capacity, I really got a chance to see, I spent more time with the director of CIA than even my own family, frankly. At that point, you're there from 6 in the morning until 10, 11 o'clock at night, if not later, traveling with the director around the world. And you really got a chance to see some of the things that an agency like CIA is exceptional at in terms of technology. And then you also see some of the things that a government agency, and I say this with reverence for the agency and for the people and its mission, but like we see, there are differences in public sector and private sector cybersecurity work, different motivations, incentives, different abilities to leverage technology and bring in new types of technology, different sort of risk thresholds. So while I was chief of staff for a few years, I really saw that. And I said to myself, when I leave CIA and I transition to the private sector, I want to try to be a part of building something, building a team, building some technology that can really accelerate the work that cyber operators are doing both inside the government and in the private sector, the CIA or the Department of Defense. Those people who are logging really hard hours and enduring the stress that comes with a career in cybersecurity to protect our critical infrastructure, who are protecting our financial institutions, our power grid, our hospitals, our way of life. If you run a business, you run a data business, and we're all vulnerable now. I had a chance over the course of my career to really see how essential it is to bring in the right types of technology. And then the last half a decade at CIA, after I left being chief of staff, I was the director of CIA's Special Activities Center, SAC. As I mentioned, the home of all its covert action capability, the men and the women, the aircraft, the vessels, the technology, all the different aspects that CIA needs to maintain and be prepared to deploy in support of presidentially authorized and congressionally supervised covert action. And it was really there in that role for 5 years, overseeing CIA's global operations on the covert action side. You saw just how essential it was to partner very quickly with the private sector, to have the type of agility that comes with that pace of innovation on the private sector side. And for me to get to the cybersecurity aspect, how I got to cyber, my background was really on the special operations side. And as I got more senior in my career and looked at moving into the private sector, I really wanted to stay in the fight. I saw in CIA and continue to see now in the private sector that the work of cybersecurity professionals across this country, whether again, they work for a bank or an MSSP, they work for the federal government, defending networks, it's noble. It's incredibly important work. There's never been a more important time to do that type of work. So for me, I felt like it was a logical and sort of natural next step to say, I just left 30 years of public service on the operational side, the sort of action oriented side, to get to cybersecurity and realize like, this is something that's essentially important.
And did the mission of where you worked in the military and the CIA drive you to continue in cybersecurity?
Thanks, Christoph. That's an awesome question. The short answer there is, yeah, it really did. And when I was looking at retirement and what I want to do next after leaving CIA, I had been in the Marines and CIA. I had over 30 years of public service, really being focused on the mission of trying to do the quiet work of protecting the country and partnering with people of diverse backgrounds, technologists, linguists, targeters, operators, pilots, to do the work of the nation, which was a huge honor and a privilege for me to play any part of. And when I thought about what can I find, what is there on the outside, really? What is there in the private sector that might give me that same sense of fulfillment where the mission matters? It's about doing work that's noble and important. And for me, the easy answer is cyber, right? I had seen it, the value of it, the importance of it when I was at CIA, both on the offensive cyber side and defensive cyber side. The really sort of incredibly challenging work that operators go through protecting the network and protecting our systems. I saw that at CIA, and I saw the exquisite work that our country's intelligence community's offensive cyber capabilities provide. I benefited from it many times during my operational career where I had pieces of insight or pieces of information, visibility or contextual awareness before carrying out an operation that I wouldn't have had but for that type of work. So when I retired and teamed up with my friend Grant Verstandig, and we looked at trying to build something together, for me, the obvious choice was cyber because the same reasons apply, whether the person is defending the CIA's network, NSA's network, or a bank or a hospital, working at MSSP, part of our power grid. That work matters. As you and your listeners know, we are in a shadow war, cyber war, 24/7, 365. It's not a made up threat. We're not having to create some sense of FOMO or drama. This is real. It's in the news every day. It's a critical issue. I think now more than ever. So I really see it as a natural extension of what I've been doing in my career. And honestly, a huge privilege to be a part of it. Compared to many in the space, I'm newish to cyber. So I've had a lot to learn and a steep learning curve, but I have a ton of admiration for people who have been really in the cyber trenches, the cyber foxholes, innovating and driving change and protecting our networks for decades. It's been a fascinating journey for me.
So tell us how you caught up, how you're drinking from the fire hose to ensure that when you're in the conversation with leaders that you're having a value add to these conversations.
Yeah, anyone who knows me, I'll be really open with you. I have a huge issue with imposter syndrome, right? Fear is the driving motivator for me. And as someone new to this space that has had decades worth of work and research and study and accomplishment and setback and innovation, it's a pretty daunting thing. So I come at it with a lot of humility. One thing I will say too, when I look at what it's been like to build a startup and raise capital and partner with investors, be in that venture startup technology ecosystem. One trait I've noticed amongst very successful people with whom I've had the opportunity to spend time is a lifelong sense of intellectual curiosity. They're passionate learners. And these are people who are multi-billionaires. They could just be surfing in Belize or skiing in St. Moritz, but they're passionate learners. So I take that to heart. Like you really have to curate strong personal learning habits. But I think as you know, and your listeners know, because they're partnered with you, you can't take on everything all at once. You have to really try to find the right 5% of information that you're pursuing as an executive or as a leader. And certainly the service that you provide has been immensely helpful for me and for others. So you got to find the right information to onboard. I think for me, it's also been staying very close to customer pain points. And I think there in both of my comments, you probably see there's a little bit of a balancing act. I think a cyber leader, or for me, a CEO and founder of a startup, I spend my time throughout the course of the day or a week or a month in a balancing act. I want to stay up to speed with the strategic changes in the industry. Where are things going on the AI and ML front? Where are things from a regulatory standpoint in the United States, in Europe, and abroad? There are meta issues that we all need to be conversant in for sure. But at the same time, we're a startup and we have to be all about our customers and customer love and building that affinity and trust, which can be difficult, right? In the cyberspace, I think over time, there's been a trust deficit in some areas between potential customers and vendors. So I want to make sure that I'm spending real time staying close to my customers' evolving pain points. So we can do that with customer roundtables, an aggressive advisory board process, post-incident debriefs, success reports that come from our customers, being very aggressive for me and plugging in with our customer success and customer experience team here at Andesite. So I'm able to hear from them, not just the good that happens in the course of the day. Like if we get good feedback from a customer, that's great. But I have to be more interested in the not so good feedback. What's not working? What are they not getting enough of? And that's a big part of it. I think leveraging our peer and investor networks has been really essential for me. I'm very blessed to have an extraordinary team at Andesite. I will say, with some real intentionality around it, we have built a very diverse team within Andesite. So, as a data science company at our core, a data analytics company at our core, but our first product, honestly, being all about cybersecurity, our AI for SOC product offering. I wanted to bring in people who obviously understood the pain points, deep cybersecurity expertise, the people who've lived in the SOCs, been in the SOCs, have felt those pain points, have been CISOs, have been heads of architecture. They put their head on the pillow every night, knowing that there is unmitigated risk there and that they're in this sort of constant evolving shadow war that we talked about with adversaries who are persistent and creative against us. So we wanted to have people who knew the cybersecurity space inside and out. Billy McMillan, our chief product officer, is one of those types of people. He was the CISO at the CIA for years. He started as an operations person. He ran CIA's offensive cyber. He ran defensive cyber. He went to Salesforce and lived in the Salesforce ecosystem as their deputy CISO for years. We have threat hunters who've come from the intelligence community, or they've come from top tier private technology companies like CrowdStrike and others, or they come from the military. But we also have a diverse background, a diverse array of technologists who have been in top companies or startups who sometimes take a contrarian view to solving problems. So we don't have blinders on from having just grown up in the cybersecurity space. We've got some real diversity there. I think there too, if I may, it's a throwback to my time at CIA, as I had mentioned before. The best of what I saw in CIA was where diverse teams came together, united by a mission that mattered and solved hard problems together. And that's what we're building here at Andesite, taking advantage of the expertise within the company to stay abreast of changes and the makeup of our team. Alan Stamen as our CTO is a senior guy. He's been doing AI and ML for a long time. Was at Scale AI, was at Microsoft for a long time. Our chief of strategy, Greg Rattray, was the global CISO at JP Morgan Chase. Our chief revenue officer came from Palo Alto Networks. So she grew up in the space. We're really fortunate, and I'm personally blessed to have a really accomplished leadership team for a seed stage cyber startup. So with that comes access into a network that's been immensely helpful for me. So I think me approaching with a lot of humility, people like you and others who've been in the cybersecurity space, and me recognizing that I have a lot to learn, and I would do well to listen more than talk, even though I realize I've been doing all the talking so far here in our discussion today. That's been really important too. Just coming at it saying, let's take advantage of our peer and investor networks and CISO councils, partner briefings from those who've been around for a long time. Those have really been the key 3 or 4 areas that have helped me get up to speed, or at least try to get up to speed and stay there as best I can.
As a startup, how do you balance the need for innovation with the need for security? Your larger companies are going to require more formal security standards, more formal compliance standards, and potentially more rigid standards than a startup might have. How do you balance that need with your need to go to market and your need to drive revenue so early in your organization?
Yeah, a really critical question, Christoph. We made a tech bet very early in our development to precisely getting at your point on the importance with enterprise customers, right? Whether it's in the federal marketplace or in the commercial space. Enterprise customers, highly regulated industries are going to require a level of compliance that in many cases is difficult to attain as a startup. So for us, and I'll say for me personally, grateful to have teamed with investors who are very patient from across a couple different key areas. Our seed round was raised with teamwork and partnership with General Catalyst. They've been incredible. Red Cell Partners, QTEL. And we told them early on, we're trying to separate ourselves from what has certainly developed into a very, very busy space, that AI for SOC landscape. When we started 2 years ago, you had people that were there and some formidable teams for sure. Here we are in 2025 rounding out, and it's a very, very active and energetic space. So there's lots of room to maneuver and differentiate yourselves. We looked at the security and compliance piece and said it has to come baked with the car. It's new technology we're looking at. You're bringing in a type of potential solution for buyers. As I mentioned to you, I've seen it. I've personally been in the conversations with people. I absolutely get it. That trust deficit sometimes is real. I think trust is absolutely essential to develop as a startup. It goes beyond that. You have to have that trust. Someone's taking a bet on you, your team, your approach, and your technology. To reinforce that, you have to have security and compliance that is reassuring to potential customers. In our case, from the very beginning, we've pursued the highest levels of security and compliance. So in alignment with FedRAMP High, SOC 2 Type 2, I say all the letters, all the numbers. And I mentioned patience from a startup standpoint because that's what it requires. Patience from investors who are going to look at you and say, how much are you investing in this? And you're building a security and compliance team with how many people? The pressure that we're all under in the startup domain is you've got to get your product out there. You've got to show some early wins, some early traction. Show me those design partnerships that you're converting. So that clock is ticking in one ear all the time. But we wanted to take the approach, as I said, to be a solution for enterprise buyers and all the way down mid and lower market, as well as in the government space. And we realized that a federal buyer, whether it's in the intelligence community, the Defense Department, or across the executive branch, you just have to meet those FedRAMP High compliance requirements. And we have built a culture in the company where everyone buys into that. We look at that issue, security and compliance, as being a real market unlock. It's a differentiator in many ways. rather than being an inhibitor, we think it's an accelerant. A lot of that comes back to culture and the ethos and the team you're building so that everyone across the company recognizes that it may feel like sometimes these extra steps we're having to take from a security and compliance standpoint may be drag inducing, but in a lot of ways they're lift producing. And we're seeing that now. It takes some time to get to where you need to be, that compliance journey. But for us, it's been absolutely essential.
Well, I'm sure it just extends the overall life cycle of closing a deal and going from business development to signature on from the private sector, it might be 8 to 9 months, but in the government sector, it might be 24 to 36 months. And like you said, patient investors that understand that makes a huge difference. So jumping into the last and your use of AI within your product. There's this kind of battle between how do you verify what the AI is doing versus how do you explain that to your clients as to how your solution might be different from others and how you differentiate yourself from others there?
Yeah, a great question there too. And again, as we look at the AI for SOC landscape and more broadly the AI for cyber, we're all seeing agentic everywhere, agentic here, agentic there. You can't go to RSA or Black Hat or DEF CON and not be blown backwards by how everything is AI, right? And I think a number of us were sort of joking at RSA where it's like, you mean RSAI? I get it. So for us, Alex, our CTO, often says, the AI portion of what we do is how we do important things, but it's not the what we do. And I think to your question about differentiation, from the very beginning of our product ideation, as we looked at what we wanted to build and how we wanted to build it, it has started with and remains wholly focused on the human being, the human operator. There's no quest here to automate cybersecurity professionals away. Rather, we look at it and say, we want to put the human at the helm. We all have, and now for the last 3 years, 4 years being in cyber, I have my own personal stories of seeing the toll that has been taken on cybersecurity operators. There's no malice of forethought here. There are no bad actors in this space, but I think so much of the technology that has been sold over the years has required human cyber operators to contort themselves around every new piece of tooling and every new piece of technology. What our chief product officer, Bill McMillan, calls technology twister, where they're having to toggle across all these different things. So when we sat down with a whiteboard and an idea, it started with and remains, as I said, focused on the human being. One differentiator is to say, this is all about the human operator. It's about building technology that very elegantly and intimately is wrapped around the human being to really optimize them in role and accelerate those things that we still feel are uniquely human, which is the ability to apply human judgment and follow investigative pathways. Our goal here and our intent on day one with our customers is to really abstract their operators out of what we look to as that tool toil, that code generation is massively important and noble work to be just simply writing queries all day long. They get into it because they want to solve our problems. They want to follow investigative pathways. They want to follow their reasoning and they want to research a hunch. So let's build something that really accelerates that on day one and offers that highly compressed and accelerated day one value proposition, which is we'll get you to decisions and risk mitigations faster. I think a big part of that optimizing the human and putting the human being at the helm has been addressing what we hear from CISOs and cybersecurity operators time and time again, which is that need for contextual awareness. I have these exquisite suites of tools that do all the things, but they're sort of a series of blinking boxes and red lights flashing and alarms going off. What I really need is to have the contextual awareness about the status of my own data, my own holdings, and the risks that I'm facing. So one of the things built in alongside that human at the helm approach is a data architecture, a data science, and frankly, an AI approach that really accelerates that contextual awareness and lets users and decision makers sort of see what's going on around them. Your question, Christoph, on some of the challenges with AI, though, I think is really important. I see this in customer meetings where it comes back to trust, right? You're looking at someone saying, I'm asking you to trust us, not just this team, but in some ways, a very new application of technology, an AI workflow that is going to be new to you. And I think absent the compliance standings that we've pursued, and I think absent an approach that we have, which we call evidentiary AI, we say no black box AI. We show absolutely everything. I can see how buyers would say, well, I don't know that I'm willing to take this bet yet. I'm going to wait another year or two and let's see how this emerges in 2026 or maybe into 2027. I think that could be dangerous, whether ultimately a customer chooses Insight Solutions or another, and your customers know the risk that generative AI is really accelerating on the offensive cyber perspectives. Those bad actors, those state and non-state actors, the hacktivists who are using really sophisticated AI to come at us, we need to batten down the hatches. And AI is one of those opportunities that can be leveraged and woven across our defensive infrastructure to help buttress our defenses. So it'd be a shame not to adopt it. But for us, we take an approach, as I said, we call it evidentiary AI. And again, we look at it, whether it's a highly regulated industry like financial services, where you have the SEC sort of looking at everything that you do and every decision that you make, or healthcare, big technology providers, and on down across the market, we have felt and built into our product offering that transparency matters. This is an opportunity to show your work and show every Splunk query, every Elastic query. We use a thing from my military background called the OODA loop, which is observe, orient, decide, and act. And you can see our tooling using its own OODA loop as it's pursuing investigations across our customers' data holdings. So I think a combination of those different factors has positioned us to be partnering up with customers across the government and commercial sector space who are believing in our approach.
Now, one last question for those looking to advance their cybersecurity careers. There's a lot of interest in the space, but then there's also complaints of a lack of being able to get interviews or layoffs on the same front. What recommendations would you have for individuals in the field for keeping up with the industry and for keeping up with AI being introduced in the field?
Yeah, a few thoughts on that. I see it, I hear it, right? And it's concerning to me. I think now is not the time to be reducing the numbers of people who are in this fight, in this cyber fight with us. And certainly our approach has been to use our technology to empower analysts and to make them better and faster. But for people who are struggling to get into the space or to get back into the space, persistence matters and resilience matters. I think it's very fast moving. I think we're very early in the game here when it comes to AI for cybersecurity. I've had conversations with AI futurists who aren't necessarily focusing on the cybersecurity aspects of using artificial intelligence. Others in the AI for SOC space, 5 years from now, they're not going to be a SOC. There won't be any people in SOC. AI is going to do all of that. Now we take a very different approach. Like ultimately, cybersecurity is about human decision making and human risk management. And there are human beings who have to be in that process as operators, as decision makers, as risk managers. So we want to empower the humans to the extent that we possibly can with this tech. But I know the industry is there's contractions, security budgets are contracting, and persistence, resilience matters. I would say, keep pushing on stuff that you're interested in. Again, as I mentioned, sorry to repeat myself, but I do think it's early. This industry is evolving very, very quickly. I know like within our company, we're always looking for people who are problem solvers. We need team players who can step into a role. In a startup like ours, we try to be very precise in defining roles, but there's going to be some role ambiguity. So sometimes it helps to be that Swiss Army knife and to come in and be the team player, be the person who is passionate about the work and passionate about the teaming. And there's no telling where you can go with that.
Thank you so much, Brian, for taking your time out of your day and for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for the opportunity. All the best.
So